Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan and welcome to today's video, which is a type of video I used to do a lot more often, and it's just chatting about some upcoming book releases that I'm excited about, that I'm interested in, that I want to bring to your attention. I used to be so on top of my game when it came to upcoming releases. I did quarterly videos talking about all the books coming out, and then I kind of fell out of it, and I'm ready to get back into it. I am calling this video fall anticipated releases, though to be honest, it's more like fall and winter because I am just going to go ahead and chat about all the books that I'm aware of, that I'm excited about coming out between September and December. I've got almost 60 books to cover, 58 I think is the exact number. They are in all kinds of genres. I'm a very wide reader. I read almost everything except for fantasy and anything that's too deep into horror. So if that's what you're looking for, this is unfortunately not the video for you, but if you like science fiction, contemporary fiction, romance, mystery thrillers, historical fiction, even some nonfiction, then hopefully I've got some books to put onto your radar. So with that, because I've got so many books to cover, let's just jump on into it. I am looking at my computer screen over here to remind myself about some of the information, but I will pop the book covers up right here on the screen. And let's just chat about some upcoming books. Let's start with September. I think it makes the most sense to go in publication order. And by the way, I get most of my information from either NetGalley or Goodreads. So if some of this information is inaccurate, I apologize. This was the information that was readily available for me. And the first book on my list is called As a Last Resort by Kristen Wollett. This looks like a debut romance book that is an opposites attract type of romance. The cover definitely caught my eye, and this comes out on September 2nd. Then I have one book listed for September 9th, and it's called The House of Quiet by Kirsten White. This is the author of Hyde and also Mr. Magic. I never did read Hyde, but I saw so many polarized reviews of it and I heard spoilers about it. It didn't really sound like it was for me, but overall it had a lot of buzz. And then Mr. Magic I did read and I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. This looks like a horror with maybe some fantasy elements to it that takes place in a haunted house. And there you go. Second book, I've actually already covered fantasy and horror, so never mind what I said about the genres. All right, then I've got a couple of interesting books that come out on September 16th. So the first one is called Extremity by Nicholas Binge. Nicholas Binge is an author I've read 2 books from. He writes like sci-fi mystery thrillers, and his most recent book called Dissolution I absolutely loved and gave 5 stars. This one that he has coming out this fall looks like it's a novella, so not a full-length novel, but it looks like it's a time travel mystery thriller that is described as an end-of-the-world police procedural. So if that sounds interesting to you, then definitely pop that onto your TBR. And then the other one that comes out on the 16th is called The Book of Guilt by Catherine Chigi. No idea how to say that last name, but this looks like it's a big genre blend type of book. It says historical fiction, but also dystopia, sci-fi, and mystery. And that blend of genres just sounds really up my alley. Okay, then we've got a whole bunch of books that come out on the 23rd. Where should I start? Let's start with Famous by Blake Crouch. Okay, this one's interesting because it looks like it first got published in 2010. I do know that Blake Crouch has a pretty extensive backlist that were obviously published before his more recent sci-fi books became really popular. So I'm not surprised to see that they're getting republished, probably to bring some more attention to them now that he is a more popular author. And normally that wouldn't really interest me, but this one says that it's a mystery thriller that is going to be adapted into an A24 film starring Zac Efron. And I do love me some Zac Efron, so I'm very interested in that. And what the book is about, it says it's about a man who goes to terrifying extremes to adopt his celebrity doppelganger's life. Sounds kind of interesting. We'll see how that goes. Similarly, another science fiction that comes out on the 23rd is called What We Can Know by Ian McEwan. I have not read from this author before, but this is a sci-fi book set in 2119 and follows survivors of a nuclear disaster. I love sci-fi. That sounds interesting to me. Okay, another one coming out on the 23rd is called One of Us by Dan Kayon. Again, not quite sure how to pronounce that, but this looks to be a historical fiction book about orphan twins who run away from their uncle and join the circus. That is a story that I would like to read. Also coming out on the 23rd is Spread Me by Sarah Gailey, a horror book. I have not read any Sarah Gailey books, but I know that she has some pretty diehard fans. No idea what this one is about, but if it's not already on your radar and you like her as an author, put it on your radar. And then last but not least, the final book coming out on the 23rd is called Unseen by Molly Burke. This is a nonfiction book. It's a memoir about, obviously, the author who is blind, and she's actually a social media influencer who I have seen around. I have never really watched all of her videos consistently, but I definitely know who she is, and I would very much be interested in reading her memoir. And her little subtitle says, "How I Lost My Vision but Found My Voice." And that sounds good to me. All right, moving on to the 30th, another big bunch of books coming out on that day, starting with You Found Oliver by Dustin Tao. This is a romance that's, I'm guessing, either a sequel or a companion novel to a book called You've Reached Sam, which was an emotional young adult book about a character who lost their boyfriend. I think it was her boyfriend. But this appears to be following the characters from that first book after, grieving and moving on, but a sliding doors romance, which sounds interesting to me. I do love a sliding doors trope. I'm expecting this one to also be pretty emotional. Then we've got Mad Mabel by Sally Hepworth. This is a mystery thriller author that I have read a few books from, and I have generally enjoyed her. No idea what this one is about, but it's her newest, so I will probably keep my eye out for reviews. Then we've got a very out there one. We've got Dating After the End of the World by Geneva Rose. This appears to be a sci-fi romance about zombies. Honestly, not something that I'm particularly interested in, but I do know a lot of people who really enjoy Geneva Rose as an author, so if that's you and this sounds up your alley, I hope you have a great time with it. Also coming out on the 30th, we've got Heart the Lover by Lily King. I have read one other book by this author, Writers and Lovers. I think is probably her most popular book, which was a literary fiction book. I think this one is also a literary fiction book, but I'll be interested to see if this one gets as much buzz as Writers and Lovers did. Okay, then we've got a new Chanel Cleaton, also coming out on the 30th, The Lost Story of Eva Fuentes. Historical fiction I have read from and enjoyed this author before. Not sure exactly what this book is about, but I would definitely be interested in giving it a try. Next, What a Time to Be Alive by Jade Chang. This one is giving Yellowface a little bit. And actually, I feel like I've read a few books that have sort of a similar premise to this, but it's a contemporary book about a girl who gets fame after posting about her best friend's death. And that post goes viral, so she becomes an influencer after this terrible situation. I'm guessing it will have some commentary about influencer life, but I have seen some buzz already about this book, so I'll be interested to hear or see for myself how it is. Okay, then we've got a new one from Suvankam Thamavongsa, who is the author of a set of short stories called How to Pronounce Knife, which I know I've seen people talk about before. But this cover of her new book really caught my eye. It's called Pick a Color. It's a contemporary book about a main character who is a nail salon owner and services a bunch of privileged clients. And it sounds like this book will have a lot of commentary about the class differential or the perceived differential of class between the clients and this main character. Sounds really good to me. I'm really interested in that one. Okay, then we've got a book called Great Disasters by Grady Chambers. This is a literary fiction book that sounded interesting to me, not really from the cover, but more from the description of the book. It sounds like it's a debut book about 6 men who live in Chicago, and I think they're friends, but they end up going separate ways. Some join the military during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and some join protests against the wars. So I'm guessing there's some, tension there about the choices that they make, and I think that sounds interesting. All right, and then the last book that I have that comes out on the 30th is called Make Me a Monster by Kaylin Bayron, which again doesn't really sound like my thing, but I have seen this author's previous book get some buzz. But this is a romance that is described as a Frankenstein tinged horror romance. Not really my thing, but I do like this cover. All right, then let's jump into October. Spooky season. I know a lot of people like the mystery thrillers in the month of October, and I expect that I will probably get into that same mood. And the first book I have to talk about, though, I've actually already read. It's called The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson. It comes out on October 7th. I did feature this in actually my last reading vlog where I was looking for a 5-star book. I read this one as an ARC. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. And it is set at a university and follows the idea of college students being particularly vulnerable to cults. So if that sounds up your alley, I do recommend it. Another mystery thriller coming out on the 7th is called The Hitchhikers by Chevy Stevens. I've actually never read a Chevy Stevens book before, though I have heard good things. So I might be interested in trying this one out if I hear some good reviews. And then I have a couple of historical fictions that actually come out on this same day. So first we have War Games by Alan Gratz. This is actually a middle grade historical fiction, and I have read one other book by this author that was set on 9/11. This one, however, is set in 1936. It looks like it's set at during the Berlin Olympics, also known as the Nazi Olympics. I will be honest, I don't know a lot about that time frame or that event in history, so I will keep this on my radar and potentially be interested in reading it to learn a little bit about that, because that is what I really enjoy about historical fiction, is learning more about time periods and events in history that I don't know a lot about. Similarly, another historical fiction, like I said, coming out on the 7th is called The High Heaven by Joshua Wheeler. This looks to be a historical fiction book about a girl born to a UFO cult in 1967, which apparently is inspired by a real story. And I don't know a lot about that, but it sounds interesting. Okay, then we've got a bunch of books coming out on the 14th of October. First we have Remain, which is a supernatural mystery thriller written by Nicholas Sparks and M. Night Shyamalan. Nicholas Sparks, I'm sure you've heard his name before. Normally he writes like emotional contemporary romance books, sometimes a little bit more historical. But M. Night Shyamalan is a director of horror films, and I have really enjoyed a lot of his movies, so I'm very interested in this collaboration. And I have already been approved for this book on NetGalley, so I will be reading it, and fingers crossed I enjoy it as much as I'm hoping to. Oh, another collaboration coming out in October is called Gone Before Goodbye, and it's written by Reese Witherspoon and Harlan Coben. Harlan Coben is a pretty popular mystery thriller author. I have read a couple of his books before, and Reese Witherspoon, obviously we all know who she is. So I'm interested to see what she can bring to the mystery thriller genre. Never thought I would see that collaboration come to light, but here we are. Another mystery thriller coming out on the 14th is Boomtown by Nick Stone. I have read, I think, young adult, like just general contemporary books by this author before, but I'm very interested in this one because it looks to be an adult mystery thriller. So I will definitely be reading that. Another one coming out on the 14th is called Run Away With Me by J.L. Simmons. It looks like this is a thriller romance genre blend that's also young adult. It looks like it's coming of age. The cover really caught my eye, so I also requested and have this one on NetGalley, so I will be reading it. Okay, a few more books coming out on the 14th. We've got something called Bog Queen by Anna North, which honestly, that title does nothing for me. But this is the author of Outlawed, which I think was like a historical fiction type of book that I saw actually some really good reviews for, but this seems to be a historical fiction mystery blend with an anthropologist main character. Don't know much more about that, but I will be keeping my eyes peeled for reviews. Then we've got some more authors that I have read from before. So first we've got Minor Black Figures by Brandon Taylor, which appears to be about a gay black painter navigating the Manhattan art scene, which sounds interesting to me. I do like Brandon Taylor, so I want to read his newest. And then we've got a new book by Marie Lu. This one's called Red City, and it is a fantasy sci-fi book, it looks like. I'm not sure how much it leans into either fantasy or sci-fi, because that's kind of a spectrum. But I did not realize that Marie Lu has never written any adult books before. I know she's written a bunch of young adult books that are both sci-fi and fantasy, but I am interested or curious in her adult debut. depending again on how fantasy it actually leans, or if it's more sci-fi. I guess I will look into reviews as they come out to find out. And then a few books that come out on the 21st of October. Let's start with the romance. We've got Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. This is a pretty popular author. She's written quite a few different romance books, but I would say First Time Caller is her most popular one. That's been released recently, but this looks to be a Christmas romance. Okay, one I'm really interested in is called Wild Animal by Joelle Dicker. This is a mystery thriller translated from French, and the reason I'm so interested in this one is because this is the author of a book called The Enigma of Room 622, which is probably one of my, I don't know, top 3 favorite mystery books of all time, and I'm definitely interested in reading his newest release. I'm actually not sure when this book was released in its original language, but it's being released in English in October, so excited about it. Okay, another one coming out on the 21st is called Bad Bad Girl by Gish Jen. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this seems to be a somewhat autobiographical historical fiction book about a mother-daughter relationship set in Shanghai. The cover is interesting to me. We'll see if this is a book that's really my vibe, but it at least caught my eye enough to put on my list to keep an eye on, which is the same case for The Midnight Lock by John Fram. I don't know if this author has written other books. I've definitely never read anything from him before, but this is listed as a mystery thriller for fans of Stuart Turton and Blake Crouch, and it's a mind-bending locked room thriller. Honestly, that's all I need to know. I'm interested. And then I've got only one book coming out on October 28th that I'm interested in, called Wreck by Catherine Newman. This is a contemporary book that actually is a sequel to a book called Sandwich, which I haven't read, so I obviously am not going to be reading this book until I do read that one, but I saw really, really great reviews for Sandwich, so I do feel like I want to read that book still, and then obviously if I enjoy it, then I might give its sequel a try as well. All right, let's move into November. Several books coming out on November 4th that I'm interested in, starting with We Fell Apart by E. Lockhart. Okay, I'm only a little bit interested in this because this is book 3 in the We Were Liars series, which is a young adult mystery thriller book series. I loved the first book in this series. I think I gave it 5 stars, and then I really hated the second book in the series, which is actually like a prequel. I gave it, I think, 2 stars, so maybe hate is a little bit strong of a term, but I really didn't like it. However, I could be convinced to pick up this third book again. If it just doesn't do what the second book did, then I have no reason not to be interested in this third one. So I don't know, maybe I'll wait for some reviews before picking this one up for sure. But I'm intrigued to see if it could redeem the second one for me. Then we've got Son of the Morning by Akweke Emezi. Okay, this is the fantasy romance book that apparently is set in hell. I don't really think that's for me, but I have enjoyed Akweke Emezi in the past, and I know she's actually a pretty popular author, so I, again, will keep an eye out for some reviews. I don't think this one will be for me, but it could be for you, so I wanted to mention it. Then we've got a book that I'm seeing actually a lot of early buzz for. We've got Cursed Daughters by Oyenkan Braithwaite. This is the author of My Sister the Serial Killer, which is a book that I didn't love, but I did like, and a lot of people I know really loved that book when it was released a few years ago, and I've been waiting to see if this author was going to put out any more books, and I'm excited about this one. It looks like it's just a general contemporary book, so a little bit different from that mystery thriller vibe from before, but still I really am looking forward to reading it. Then we've got a couple of mystery thrillers from authors that I've read from before. I don't know anything about these books, but they're on my radar because I've enjoyed them in the past. So we've got The Perfect Hosts by Heather Gudenkoff. She's written quite a few other books. I think the one I've read is called This Is How I Lied, but also The Overnight Guest was a pretty popular one. And then the other thriller coming out on this day is called The Bridesmaid by Kate Quinn, who is the author of The Clinic, which was pretty popular when it released just 1 or 2 years ago. Okay, then we have a few young adult books that are coming out on November 4th. So first we have Under a Fire Red Sky by Geraldine McCaughrean. Don't know about that, but young adult historical fiction that I really love the cover of, but set during the London Blitz in World War II and inspired by the author's father. I have really come to enjoy young adult historical fiction lately, so I might want to give this one a try. Then we've got a young adult romance called Never Seen the Stars by Kate Korsh. This one says it combines the ethereal romance of You've Reached Sam, which I talked about earlier, meets the challenge of coming of age with a disability of The Fault in Our Stars, which is a very intriguing combination of love and grief that I think sounds interesting. Last but not least, on this day, we've got The Writing Room by Marcia Argetta Mickelson, a young adult contemporary book that says it's hard-hitting and probably has some social commentary. So I always enjoy that. Okay, then we've got a book that I have listed as coming out on November 6th, but that's kind of strange because that's a Thursday and normally books are released on Tuesdays. So not sure what's going on with this, but we have The Silver Book by Olivia Lang, which looks to be a historical fiction that features queer characters, which is also something I really enjoy in historical fiction because that's not often the type of stories we see centered, but I like to read them. Okay, then a handful of books coming out on 11/11, which is exciting. First, we've got My Sister's Daughter and Silent Echo by Liv Constantine, which I believe is 2 mystery thriller novellas in one. No idea if they've been released in other places before this or why they're being released together as this book, but interesting. And I have read and enjoyed books by Liv Constantine in the past. Same with Next Time Will Be Our Turn by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I have enjoyed this author before. I think they write books in both romance and mystery thriller genres, but this one is a queer romance. I really like the cover of it. Then we've got 30 Flirty and Forever Alone by Christine Riccio. I have read from this author before. She actually used to make YouTube videos, both booktube and authortube content. I have read 2 books by her, and one I generally liked, but one I really liked. Actually, I think it was her most recent release before this one, so I'm curious to read this one as well. Looks like it's a romance that might have a slight magical realism element to it. Then a couple of authors that I have not read from before. We have How We Play the Game by Alexis Ned. This is a young adult romance that is about competitive gaming and fake dating, and it says it's for fans of Slay, which is one of my all-time favorite books, so I'm probably gonna pick up any book that compares itself to it, but this one looks fun. And then we have Opposite Worlds by Elizabeth Ann Martins, which is a sci-fi book. It says Inception meets dark matter with echoes of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and the unsettling corporate dystopia of Severance. That sounds so good. Again, I need no more words. I am interested. Okay, and the final group of books that I have that come out in November come out on November 18th. So the first one I have is The Birding Library by Jillian McMillan. This looks to be a mystery thriller book with a dark academia vibe to it, which is intriguing, and I have read from and enjoyed at least one book by this author before. Also really enjoyed Mindy McGinnis in the past, and her newest book is called How Girls Are Made. It's a young adult mystery thriller that is dark, emotional, and explores the dark side of social media. I definitely will be reading this because, like I said, I really love Mindy McGinnis as an author, and I do have a copy of this one on NetGalley. Then we have Mindworks by Neil Shusterman, which is a collection of short stories. It actually says it's an uncanny compendium of short fiction. I'm not normally a short fiction, short stories kind of a reader, but I do really like Neil Shusterman. This is the author of the Scythe series and a couple of other books that I've also read, so maybe I'll give this compendium a try. And then the last book I have that comes out in November is I'll Find You Where the Timeline Ends by Kylie Lee Baker, which, beautiful cover first of all, and this is a young adult romance with kind of a fantasy time travel element to it. All right, and now we have finally made it to December. There's only a few books releasing in December that I'm aware of. This matches what I've seen in the past. December, for some reason, is a slower release month for books, but there still are some good ones in here, or what I hope will be good ones. First, releasing on December 2nd, we've got There's Always Next Year by Leah Johnson and George M. Johnson. No relation that I'm aware of, but I have read both of these authors separately before, and I'm very excited for them to come together in this one. It looks like it's a queer romance, and I will definitely be reading it. Then we've got a book called Friends and Liars by Kit Frick, which is a mystery thriller about 4 friends trapped in a powerful family's deadly game. That sounds super interesting to me. This is the author of I Killed Zoe Soprano, which I never read, but I did always like the cover of, and I think I saw some good reviews for, so I've been interested in this author since then. And then also releasing on December 2nd is The Gallagher Place by Julie Doerr, which looks to be a debut book that is a mystery historical fiction blend, which I've already mentioned I do tend to enjoy. We've got a couple of books coming out on the 9th of December. First, we've got Murder in Manhattan by Julie Mulhern, which is a historical mystery set in 1920s Manhattan, which sounds like fun vibes, especially around the new year. I don't know why that gives me new year vibes, but it kind of does. Then we've got also coming out on the 9th, Love Letters for Other People by Shaylin Gandhi, which is a second chance romance that looks like it's going to be emotional. I'm all about the emotional romances, so I'm excited for that. And then last but not least, the 58th book on my list is coming out on December 30th, and it's called Ain't Nobody's Fool by Martha Ackman. This is the life and times of Dolly Parton. I love Dolly. I'm interested in her memoir or a book written about her, and this one also gives strong New Year's vibes, which makes sense because it's coming out on the 30th and it's definitely on my radar. So that is all of the books that I have on my list that I'm excited about coming out in the next few months. Let me know all the things. Let me know if I missed any books that are on your radar, especially if they're in any of the genres that I mentioned. There's a good chance that I missed some releases that I would be excited about, but even if I won't be excited about them, let me know which books are coming out that you are excited about. Also, let me know if any of the books on my list you also have on your radar and on your upcoming TBR. Let me know if you happen to have read any of them. Maybe you have art copies. Let me know what's actually good, what I should be excited about. I think it is going to be a great fall season of reading. I know a lot of us get excited about the prospect of cooler weather, cozying, bundling up indoors with a good book. That does sound pretty good to me right now. But other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.